Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. I was reading in 1 Samuel 17 today. Getting ready to go have some burnt pancakes and bacon and milk. And what hit me today, man, because as I said before, I've been struggling with I've been in a valley, my mind. And what hit me today in this chapter, story of David and Goliath, was, Lord, change my mindset. Change my mindset. And the bottom line, we all know the story of David and Goliath, but some things really jumped out at me today. Powerful, grabbed my heart. And what got my mind was that you had the Israelites on one hand. They had one perspective and mindset, Israelites, and that was fed to them through Saul's lack of faith. You had Goliath and the Philistines. They had one perspective and mindset. Then you had David. He had a different perspective and mindset. That's the bottom line. So my prayer today is, Lord, help me change my mindset. Help me change my perspective towards one of you. And here's the thing. The Philistines knew what God had done for the Israelites. The Israelites knew what God had done for them. David knew what God had done for the Israelites. But it's only David in this case who remembered that as the story unfolds. And that's what God's speaking to me. As I get worried about Corona and Fauci and all these things we talk about at NTC. Should you have the vaccine? Should you not? Should you get fired? What if you have to take it? What if you don't? I'm saying, Lord, change my mindset, change my perspective. So check this out here. Let me go through the story of David and Goliath real quick. This is what I got out of it. And you can see, man, I got highlights all over this chapter as I break down some things that I feel the Lord speaking to my heart. And again, as I say, I share these things because it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic for me just to talk about it and share and help somebody maybe who's struggling with some things I'm struggling with as well. So, 1 Samuel chapter 17, the Israelites were assembled. The Philistines and Israelites were assembled together. So a champion named Goliath came out. Verse 4. Then it says, Goliath shouts at the Israelites, am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? That's where Goliath was wrong the first time, his mindset. The Israelites were not, quote unquote, servants of Saul. They were the army of God Almighty. So he had the wrong perspective. He didn't know who he was dealing with. He didn't know who he was. Because, of course, in today's language, we'd say, no, he was a servant of Satan. So that was one perspective. 2, he says, and he says again, then the Philistine said, this day I defy the ranks of Israel. Wrong perspective, dude. He wasn't defying the ranks of Israel. He was defying God Almighty. Think about that. Then it goes on here. So Jesse's oldest sons were there. They were in the war, right? I guess they were conscripted, I'm guessing maybe. I don't know how that works, but sometime back then. Another thing that came to mind, verse 20, early in the morning. There's a lot of good stuff that happens early in the morning. If you're not an early riser, you should be an early riser, by the way. So David left the flock, and he went to just bring some food to his brothers. And it says, David left the things with the keeper of the supplies and ran to the battle lines to greet his brothers. My guess is David liked to see the battles. It was probably bloody, very sad, but he was young and couldn't fight, I guess, at the time. But he as a boy, as a young man, he wanted to be in the fight, but he couldn't. So he ran to the battle lines excited. I get to take some food, and I get to hang out with my brothers today. It goes on. So Goliath makes his rant to the Israelites. He yells at them again, and makes the taunt. And David heard this, and he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God? You can see how David's perspective checked in. He's like, this dude is not defying Israelite, is not defying the army of Saul. He's defying God. His perspective. So that's that. And then his brothers, of course, you have people in your life sometimes who will drag you down. Maybe David had some issues with his brothers that we don't know about. He was a young guy. I'm sure he got on their nerves, etc., right, as young people do. But the point is, David's older brother said, I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You only came to watch the battle. So David was really in a good state, from what I can tell. And he was like, this giant's defying the armies of God. That's where his mind was. But his brother was like, nah, you got some wickedness in you. So finally, they were discouraging him. Finally, somebody said, let's tell Saul. So Saul heard it, and Saul said, go ahead. But even Saul was discouraging him. But after a while, Saul relented, said, let's see what you can do. May God be with you. But then Saul again, Saul's mindset, take my armor, put it on. His mindset, David said, King, I can't. He tried it on, but he's like, I got to do me. And not me, of course. He's like, I got to do what I'm used to. So here's what was interesting, is that um, David made the case to Saul why he could hit the giant. This is what jumps out to me. He said, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or bear came up and carried the sheep, I went after it, struck it, rescued it, pulled the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, killed it. And he goes on as on, king, I've been in the mire, I've been in the muck, I've been in the fight, in the battle already. Just me and God and sheep. And if I can do that, O king, I can take care of this giant. That was legit powerful to me. He remembered what God had done for him. And sometimes we forget what God does for us. I know I forget what God does for me. God's done so much for me. And Ronnie reminded me of that. She's like, Ramon, why are you so worried about the shelter in place and virus and being canceled? If God's done so much for you, he will take care of us. So having a Proverbs 31 woman like that is a beautiful thing. So that's what David, that's the gem of this. David's like, king, I've been in the fight. I've been in the battle already. And I know God can take care of this with me as well. So finally, again, Saul tried to dress David in his armor. It didn't work. And we know the story. David went out with this 5 stones, slung the stone. But again, it wasn't so much, I think, the stone. Yes, he had that practice. He had that experience. So for him, Goliath was no different than a lion. Goliath was no different than a bear. Goliath was no different than the battles he faced before. But it was just him and God. And this was him and God. And Goliath was no different. So sometimes the problems in our life we think are bigger. Oh no, this problem is really big. This problem is terrible. God can't help me with this problem. But let's remember what God has done. And the same God who helped us with the other problem can help us with this problem. I hope this helps you. I know it's helped me. It speaks to me. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to me. God bless.